What's up, y'all? I'm Reed the Fishmonger with Saltwater Sportsman Magazine, and today we're gonna teach you how to get the absolute most out of your fresh pompano. Pompano is the absolute prize of shallow water fishing. These fish have a delicious, sweet, mild flavor. They eat shallow water clams, sand fleas, and other shallow water shellfish, which just gives them an absolutely delicious flavor. Pompano have an above average fat content, which other fish that have a similar diet to pompano that are leaner don't have the flavor that is coming through the same way that pompano does with their higher fat content. So when it comes to cleaning pompano, to me, as a professional fishmonger, it is so important to make sure you get the most out of your fish. Not only because they're expensive for me to get in, these fish were swimming around this morning. They've got their protective slime on them. They are in rigor mortis. The fishermen that caught these took perfect care of them. They came straight out of the water and went into a saltwater nice slushy. So this fisherman had a full cooler full of ice. Then he took a 5-gallon bucket of salt water or two and poured it into his cooler of ice, creating a slushy consistency. These fish came straight out of the water and went straight into that slush. There was no hard smacking on the deck of the boat. There was no hard smacking on the top of a cooler full of ice, because if you just put your fish on top of a cooler full of ice, they're not gonna sink into it and they're gonna be dying slowly as they're smacking into that ice, which is gonna bruise the meat. These fish went into a slush, sank down, and as they're flopping, they're not hitting any hard surfaces until they go into rigor mortis, where you can hold them by the tail and they look like that. So that is step one to taking proper care of your prized fish. Step two is happening at the fillet table. The best tip I can give you on how to get the most out of your fish is to cut the head off first. And I don't mean cut the head off first as in coming down here and sawing it off. A typical way to fillet fish is coming behind the head at an angle and then starting either tip of the knife at that opening, sliding down, or starting right here and pulling forward. What we're gonna do on pompano is their meat outlines their head. We're gonna follow that outline. Just take the entire head off. That way, when we fillet it, we get all of the meat that's behind the head and under the chin of the pompano. It is the best way to get the most meat out of your pompano. And often I like to gut fish before cleaning them. Pompano, I don't even gut them before cleaning them. What I do is I make another saltwater nice slushy, and as I fillet them, any debris that's on the fillet is gonna get rinsed off in that slush and it's gonna look beautiful. So when it comes to taking the head off of your pompano, you can use your fingers to feel where the meat ends and the bone begins. And you're gonna use your knife to outline that line. So the meat starts right there, and we're just going to follow it along. Then, now that we're at that soft spot there, we're gonna hook underneath. We're gonna hook our knife around and chop that head right off. Now when we're filleting it, we're gonna get all that meat underneath there that you would have lost if you didn't take the head off first. And there you go. Now, there is small amounts of meat behind the head. You can cook them down and get that out, but for me, these go into crab traps. We're gonna show you a couple more times just to make sure you got it. We're gonna find where the head bone starts and the meat begins, and we're just going to outline that. They pop right off super easily. If you have crab traps, save those heads for those traps. They work wonders. All right, now we're ready to fillet our pompano. We're going to rest our knife right on top of that dorsal fin. On pompano, you can feel the bone that is connected to their dorsal fin. You're gonna rest your knife right on top of that, make a small incision, and pull all the way up, making sure that you ride it along all the way to that top. Don't want to lose out on that meat behind the head. It is delicious. Now we can rest our knife right on top of that skeleton and pull towards the head. Between those two motions, you got to the center spine. Now you want to stick the tip of your knife at the base of the ribs Make sure your knife isn't levitating off the skeleton. You want your knife pressing down on the skeleton, angled slightly up. And what that just did is separated the connection the pin bones make to the ribs. Now you can take the tip of your knife and hit the second side. Rest your knife right on top of those rib bones and slide down. Now that you're at the other side of the rib bones, make sure you don't lose that meat that's underneath the head. Give it a little flick, and there's your beautiful pompano fillet. We did get some of the blood on it. What you want to do is hit it in that brine right away, so that way that blood doesn't absorb into the meat, and as long as you brine it right away, it'll come off looking gorgeous like that. All right, we've got a little bit of membrane left on our pompano. All we're gonna do is slide our knife right underneath that, go all the way to the edge, and boom. There's your beautiful pompano fillet. Absolutely no meat loss on that. Let's hit the second side. Look at that skeleton. Totally wiped clean, ribs left on the fillet. On the second side, I often leave the ribs on and cut them off second. I'll show you what I mean. Again, we're gonna find that bone resting on top of that dorsal fin, go right on top of it, flip your knife around, make sure you don't lose that meat behind the head there. Rest your knife right on the skeleton, and just like that, we're at the halfway point. Now on the second side, it's easier to find the ribs because all you have to do is come down from right over here. Now we can stick the tip of our knife right there, just like that. Got that tasty morsel from underneath the chin. On these pompano skeletons, if you wanted to gut your fish first, you could take these skeletons with the tiny morsels of meat left on them and fry them up just the way they are and get, little pickings. But if you're just going for the fillet, pompano have one of the highest yields on local fish we catch. And because they have the highest yield on local fish we catch, there really isn't much left on those skeletons. All right, guys, now that you didn't waste a drop of your pompano, it's time to get cooking. My favorite way to cook pompano is any way that gets the skin crispy. I get asked on a daily basis by customers wondering how they should cook their pompano. My answer is always the same: any way that gets the skin crispy. The skin on pompano is edible. Not only is it edible, but there's a thin layer of sweet fat between the meat and the skin, and that sweet fat comes from its clams and sand flea diet. Like, who doesn't want to get down on that? So if you get the skin crispy, you've got that crispy top with that buttery inside. That is definitely the bite you want to go for. And if you haven't tried it yet, you're missing out. Please, next time you catch pompano, get the skin crispy, whether it's in a pan, on a grill, under the broiler. I tell customers all the time, if you can't get the skin crispy, and if you can't grill it, pan fry it, or cook it on the broiler, go for a different fish, because you're really missing out on the pompano experience if you don't do one of those things. You guys, thank you so much for watching. Saltwater Sportsman, thank you so much for having me. You guys, hope you have a killer rest of your day, and good luck catching some pompano this winter.